Okay. Hi, Katish. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today to talk about our new book
Hi,
coming out.
Ameera.
Hi. So, first of all, how was the writing experience for you this time around? I know you write poetry and you write all kinds of wonderful stuff. And how was this maybe different from some of the other things that you've written as well?
Well, I didn't know what I was going to write, and I didn't know why I was being called to write this book because it made no sense to me. I read the blurb that you sent me, and I thought initially that the whole premise of the book was trying to prove that reincarnation exists with client examples. And I was like, oh, that's, I don't want to do that. I've just stopped being a past life regression therapist. I don't want to do that. That's just not me. And then you told me the story about how you got my name, and I was like, oh, there must be something in here that I'm supposed to do. So I sat with it, and I had absolutely no idea what I was going to write. And I sort of tend to do that with writing is I wrangle. I have no idea, and then it comes to me, and I just sit down and write. And usually I do it in one or two sittings. I think I did it in two sittings for this time. And for me, what was interesting was that the story that I sat down, I already knew because it was one of my past lives. But it wasn't until about the same time, or maybe a little bit before, I was going to enter an online speaking competition. And I went to practice the speech and I said my speech, and a whole different understanding of my speech came out. And I downloaded a different interpretation that I was finally allowed to see of the past life. And so that allowed me to actually then go and write that new perspective and get two perspectives on the lifetime that I start the chapter with. So it was quite interesting because I had to speak it and also write it and get new insights. So that was the first part of it. The second part of the chapter is a channeled poem, and I had no idea I was writing that until I just sat down to write it. And that's a 1,000 word poem. I've never written a poem that long before. Bit crazy.
That's so cool.
So,
I love I've read some of your poetry. You shared in the group that your poetry book, the one with the green cover. What's the name of that one?
Soulful Poems, Nature and Nurture.
Yes. So I know that you were a very gifted, skilled writer, and a lot of it also comes from channeling, which is really cool. So I'm interested to know and to read about what the channel poetry you did for your chapter. So after you sat with it for a little while and you were like, okay, I'm getting in new insights on, what I should think about or a different perspective. How then did you start thinking about informing your chapter? Did it just come all at once, or did you like sit down in pieces? Were there any things that stood out immediately, like I have to share this?
Yeah, so literally I sat down, wrote the first part, walked away, wrote, came back the second time, wrote the channel poem, and then the final part was another realization that linked to the first part. So um, my first and second part, so first and final part linked together because they talk about how when the manner of a death is so traumatic for an incarnation and the soul does not heal it, then that incarnation um, doesn't heal, and other incarnations may repeat the same genre of death
Oh, that's interesting.
over, yeah, over and over again.
So
So,
something like what do you mean by traumatic? Do you mean something like a murder, or do you mean like a suicide, or what could it be?
yes, so I talk about drowning.
Oh, yeah, that is pretty traumatic. Someone told me yesterday because I was telling them that I don't like, not that I don't like it, but I get an eerie feeling around large bodies of water that I cannot see into. So
Hmm.
we were driving along, we've got the mountains and there's a cliff and the ocean is right below. So it was really dark ocean, like that dark, dark blue. And I was just saying, if a boat had to drop me off there, I would freak out. I would not be able to, you know. And they said that they knew someone who actually fell off a boat and they got something stuck onto their clothing, something heavy. I don't know what it was. Something heavy stuck onto their clothing and they were just sinking. And, eventually they found them, but they had drowned, obviously, by then. So that is extremely traumatic from my point of view. So are you saying that something like that might happen again and again and again just because it was traumatic and it stays with the soul?
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. So I have always been motion sick in this lifetime. Put me on water and really, really motion sick. So that was one of my clues. If I look back to earlier in lifetime, I can swim, not a strong swimmer though. My mum wouldn't ever put her head underwater, so she sent me swimming lessons and all that sort of stuff, but not a strong swimmer. Uh, liked the idea of boats and being out in the water, but never was really around anybody. But if I went on to the water, I would be really motion sick. Yeah, so
Mm.
the body leaves clues, and depending upon how deep the trauma is, what I mean by the trauma, I mean, were you expecting it? At some level, were you expecting uh, that you would have an incident like this? Like some people come into their bodies and they are sort of certain that their life will end in a certain way. I don't know why they do, but it's like they've been pre-told. So they might be like, okay, I've got a feeling I'm going to live till 50, and then I'm going to finish my life in this country, and I'll probably have a peaceful death surrounded by my family or, whatever it is. Some people have no idea about the way that they're going to die. Like I have no idea about the way that I'm going to die. But sometimes we can be really, really afraid of something or be really drawn to something and wonder why. So I don't want to give any spoilers on my chapters, but often periods in history or incidents in history that we are fascinated by and do a lot of research into, to the point of somebody might say an obsession. So you read everything about it, you watch every movie on it, you're just always drawn to it. Then quite often, then you find that you had a lifetime either in that period of time or something happened very similar or you were on whatever it was. So if you're watching a movie about a period of time where there's a war, for example, and you have a fear of flying, maybe you got shot down in a war in an airplane, that pretty much any scenario you can think of. um those sort of morbid fascinations in terms of returning to something can be an indication of a lifetime where something similar happened. And why does the soul keep visiting similar situations? Sometimes it's that there's a lesson to learn. Sometimes there's a limiting belief that needs to be healed or a limiting perspective. Sometimes it can be that you basically have a vow to do better or help somebody who wants to learn something. So you say, okay, I've done that before, so I should be able to do the reverse of this situation and help you learn an objective. And sometimes there are situations where we have and this is what I talk about in the first example in the book, is a dual incarnation, where we, at the same time, incarnate in two different perspectives in one lifetime. So if you put aside the fact that there is no such thing as time except for on Earth, and that everything and all incarnations are happening at once, what the soul can do, and what the soul did in my perspective, and in the first story that I write about, is the soul released two streams of consciousness at the same time to be born in the same time period, to then have major conflicting roles against each other. And so the idea is that the karma balances. So you're not engaging in a conflict or a karmic situation with anybody else. You're resolving something in your own mind.
Yes, I love that idea. Yesterday I was having a discussion about the karma and that cycle of when does it end, because there must be that balance always. So what if the balance continue, the balancing kind of attempting to balance can go on over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So I like this is the first time I'm hearing this perspective of you can experience both sides simultaneously so that the karma is balanced. I want to say immediately, you know. Just to go back to what you were saying about earlier in the first example about when you have the traumatic death and then it continues happening, you explaining it almost like, okay, there might be some lessons, there might be some, things that you need to teach or learn or whatever. So the continuing of that death or the way the person is dying over lifetimes is more an intentional thing rather than just like uh something the soul holds on to, so it continues to be an intentional decision that in every lifetime it will be so.
Well, every single person who incarnates that's part of a soul has a different perspective on things, different lessons, and different intentions. So there's no blueprint for why we as a soul decide to do something. So it can be very, very complex and difficult to explain to people. Sometimes I know, for example, one of the major bodies of my work in this lifetime has been understanding the phenomena of what we call ghosts.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes the reason why a soul keeps experiencing the same kind of trauma is because at the time of the death of the incarnated person, the incarnated person has got so much that they can't get over, they haven't resolved. They maybe can't find their body. They don't believe in any concept of an afterlife, or don't believe that it's more like a nihilistic point of view. They don't believe that there's anything else. They think that it just blacks out and stops. They don't believe in whatever kind of a friendly being to help them get to an afterlife concept. So they just believe that it stops, or they believe in a religious construct where there's punishment, then they will not return to be in what I call the afterlife. You may call it heaven or whatever, and join with their soul. Okay, so basically when the breath leaves the body, it's the spirit leaves the body and it goes on its journey. Now, if you're someone like me, I have historically in other incarnations looked for an angel. That's just been my perspective. And what I've learned through my own past life regressions and my work with ghosts in this incarnation is that we have free will, right? And so if you see the light or a rainbow bridge or a family member or a pet or God or an angel or a diva or some kind of a being who says, come and take my hand, you may take their hand and go up and then look down, is the way that I see it, and go, oh, no, no, I can't do that. I want to go back. And because you have free will, they will let you go.
Mm.
Or you may just never see the light in the first place because you're so clouded by your own thoughts. Um, there are many different reasons, but so if your spirit doesn't go back up to do a life review, to contemplate itself away from the density of Earth, away from the incarnated body, then it can't have the opportunity to heal. That's the main thing. So, and depending upon what you're here for, so different souls have different blueprints would be a word, but I'm not a specialist in that area, designs. Then you may decide to do different kinds of missions in order to teach other beings, teach other incarnations of your soul, different sorts of experiences. So you may think that you're doing good service to your soul or humanity or whatever by staying on Earth and trying to sort it out, but you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So the reason why I say that is because as myself, I have been stuck, as you would call it. My energy has been stuck many, many times. And that can be just a small aspect of your energy. Um, it can be a whole different varieties. But yeah, when that consciousness stays stuck, it doesn't get that opportunity to heal. And the best place to heal is when you're no longer with the body, because then depending upon on your belief systems, you can call in the various teams and guides that you're with to do that healing when you're not in the framework and the mindset that is attached to being a human being, because we have such a looping circle of thoughts. Which are very negative and judgmental, especially about ourselves. So we get stuck in that spiral of shame and blame, and that's where we get people stay behind us to haunt other people, to search somebody out, to tell them one last thing. They may mistakenly believe that they can help a loved one or family member. I can see ahead that they're going to um, meet somebody who's going to be devastating. I'm going to stay there and be the voice beside their shoulder so that they don't date that person or don't go to that conference or whatever it is. But what they don't understand is that they're doing that from an unhealed perspective. The human being, unless they have trained and had or been naturally born with mediumship skills, can't hear them anyway. So they're better off going up, as I call, to the light, receiving the healing on the perspective, and then they can become a spirit guide or they can become an angel or whatever it is, to be able to organize ways to transmit messages and soul family members to be around the person that they love, that they wanted to influence.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that you said that because I wonder about that too. Like I always thought when someone dies, their breath leaves the body or they leave the body behind, they immediately have that elevated perspective. Like they immediately know, oh, cool, I had this life and this was fun and there's my loved ones and everyone's going to be okay. Like I thought immediately when you leave the body, your consciousness is expanded and you have an elevated perspective, right? But as you're explaining, that's not the case. You need to go to like you have to consciously or intentionally heal and integrate the experiences so that you can become a spirit guide if that's what you wish or whatever it may be. I didn't know that. That's really cool. And also as you were explaining, it's kind of giving me the vibe of like it's so important to learn how to die. It's important
Mhm.
because once you are dead, you are dead. If you don't know what to do, then you're going to be a wandering ghost or you're going to, whatever. So learning these things before you die could be helpful, such as, finding a way to get to the light or having, if you have limiting beliefs, I don't know how to say it exactly, but kind of having like a plan B, like, okay, I want to stay within my religion, but I want to have a plan B in case that doesn't work out the way I think it's going to work out when I die. You know what I'm saying? Like, have a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the best thing to do is, and all different religious traditions and spiritual traditions and, earth-based traditions all will tell you, try to resolve your life as you go through it. So be as good as you can be to yourself and to others as you go along. With the knowledge that you have, like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, do better. But do also, like, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And make sure that, you realize that some things you just can't resolve, and you just have to find forgiveness for somebody in your heart and yourself, and know that you can't have those conversations. You just have to bless them and, you know, ask or pray or, do whatever you can do to resolve a conflict in your mind. Writing in a journal, going to a church, lighting a candle, saying a prayer, talking to a loved one or a therapist or a counselor. Other times you can have that conversation. You can have a really difficult conversation with someone, or you can tell somebody that you love them or whatever it may be. Sorry, romantic examples always come up. But you just also have to be really sure that you understand that self-judgment holds people back. I've crossed over nuns because they believed they had sinned, right? Because they hadn't been perfect. You don't have to be perfect. And so whatever you believe the creator is, or the deity is, or the whatever you believe judges you, I think anybody from any tradition would say, don't misinterpret the words. Understand that you were born for a reason. You have your own contribution to yourself, to society, and to family, no matter how great or small that is. And, the end goal is to rest in peace. So rest in the perspective that you tried your best, even if it was a shambles and chaos. You don't understand the full picture. So you don't understand that maybe you did have an argument with somebody and you were in the wrong, but maybe they needed to hear that perspective. Maybe you influenced their life 20 years down the track in the most profound way that you've got no idea. Maybe you fall out of touch with somebody because you need to. You need to have that final argument and vow never to see each other again in this lifetime, because it's the best thing for you. Maybe from a higher perspective, your soul is saying, oh, if these two go down one more time again to sort this out from a different perspective, I'll scream, because we've tried 7 different varieties of this already. You two are never going to get on. There's just too much damage done, and you need to learn to come to self-forgiveness and know that you're not a good team together. That's just an example. But yeah, so it's understanding that, and then understanding that it may be really scary to contemplate death. But right now in society, we're in a really privileged time that there are people who have had near-death experiences and come back to tell us. There are people like QHT practitioners and past life regression therapists who have, for the last sort of 50 years, written and videoed and recorded perspectives, so that even if you can only have like 0.5% of belief that there is an ability to go on, then look for the light, look for the most peaceful thing. And my feeling is that if you're watching this or reading the book, that it's certainly guaranteed that you will have less fear by the time you finish reading whatever chapters you're going to read in the book. But also that most likely, if you're afraid of spiritual beings or religious beings, it's going to be a family member or a grandma or a favorite cat or a dog or something like that who is going to greet you. And you see this in retirement village videos, like on Facebook and stuff, where you see an old grandma and she reaches out and it's like she's touching somebody. if you are at peace with yourself and what you've done, and you're not sure, you can be sure that in the lead up to your final days, you will start perceiving family members are trying to communicate with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it remains a fascinating topic for me. I mean, I love reading about near-death experiences and all that. And lately, I'm more into the death event itself. Like you say, you can start peering into the other side, especially when you are old and you're dying of, old age, or like, you may be in hospice. Those are a lot of cases where they start interacting with non-physical beings, and you can see them doing so. You might not necessarily see the non-physical being, but you see the person who's in the process of dying interacting with them. Super fascinating, because I think that also gives them a relief of some kind. I was speaking to someone recently, and she was sharing about her mother who has dementia. And her mother was an atheist all her life, and she's old now, extremely old. I think she's in her 90s, and she has dementia, and she um, became old as an atheist. Like, she rejected all other belief systems. And she's now having trouble with, I think, the transition process, because her caregiver says that there are times when she feels like she is reaching out to something. There's something communicating with her, but she freaks out and she disengages herself. Like, she will do something, she will either have an abrupt episode where she's just, unconsolable, or, she'll do things that are just out of nowhere. She just, has some odd behavior, and the caregiver thinks it's a being or someone trying to communicate with her, helping her to cross over or helping her to transition in some way, and she doesn't want to, or she gets afraid, and then she pulls away from that. And I wonder how would a non-physical being in that case try to help someone like that? Because firstly, they are not always lucid. We don't even know when she's lucid, because she's most of the time she's alone. Well, her caregiver is there, but she's not with her 24/7. So how would what I'm thinking from a spirit guide point of view, like, how would they reach you if your belief systems are so closed off and you have dementia?
Yeah, so the best thing actually to look at it, I mean, if I was a spirit guide, the way that I would go about it is try and influence the humans that are around. Sorry, my cat is at my feet. Try and influence the um the humans that are around. I would try and get the humans that are around this person to create the most peaceful environment possible to reduce the stress levels. So that would be like to get some lavender essential oil and put a diffuser on for them, or, something like a cedar wood or a frankincense, because that calms the autonomic nervous system. I would be finding their favorite music, or some peaceful classical music. And I would also be doing things like Max, sorry, he's got an opinion. Um, Talking to them about the fact that there are angels here, to help you, because a person who is in the dying process can actually hear you even when they're not conscious. So we know that you can talk to somebody who is dying. They can be in a coma, and for example, and they can still hear you. So you can soothe them. You can read them stories or prayers or whatever it is, and actually help them with the fear, and tell them that it's okay, it's time to go. You do whatever you can to make themselves comfortable. And I guess the fact that we talk about is that the human does have free will. And so part of any human being's process is the fear of death. Okay, doesn't matter. I still have a small fear of death, even though, I've done so much work with all sorts of beings about it. Is allowing that emotional release. If she's feeling fear, to allow her to cry, to get angry, to go through all of these things, because you don't know if she's got dementia, whether she's revisiting the death of her parents or her grandparents. Sometimes we don't know what's happening when the brain's in that sort of state, but we know that she would be seeing something different. So it's mostly about making them comfortable. And somebody's book, like somebody like Bronnie Ware or someone like that from Hay House, who wrote about working with people when they are dying. They have great perspectives and ideas on how to make people comfortable. You can get, I know it's an extreme example, but I wish I'd done this for my father when he was dying. You can get, they're called deathbed choirs and deathbed musicians that just come and play violins or cellos or whatever in a hospice setting or in a house, just to really make it comfortable. But most of all, you can do your own prayers. You don't have to be a religious person to pray. You just say, make it up. Dear angels, my mother is seeming to be in a fearful place. Please help send the energy of calming energy to her to help her in this transition process. And if you feel, it's quite common to feel after somebody has died, to still feel their energy around, and at least until the funeral. And if they stick around even after the funeral and you feel like, oh, I can still feel mum around, then mum or dad needs to know that you're at peace with their death. And then there's this wonderful book called The Crossing Over Prayer Book. It's by a lady, Tina Irwin, and she taught me how to be a ghost rescue medium. And she has a whole book of different prayers that you can say. She also has an audiobook version that if you sense the energy around, you can say these prayers and that spirit will go to the light. I think also another good one is, and I know this is a religious example again, and I'm not religious, but it was very helpful to know this. Psalm 23, which is often done at funerals. There's a version of Psalm 23 in every religious and spiritual tradition, and it basically walks the human being through the process of seeing the tunnel or going up to the light, and talking about the valley of dark and all that sort of stuff. If you play Psalm 23 out loud or say it out loud, it helps them, because they can hear you. If they happen to become a ghost for some known reason, or they decide to do their review really down close to the dimension that we're in, they can hear you. And so they can hear the audio playing, and you can go on YouTube and play Psalm 23, just loop it. I did this first before I knew how to cross over ghosts, because I live opposite from a hospital. So I had a great big plethora of them come in when I moved. And to start with, I literally had to play that Psalm 23 over and over again at sunset as I learned to communicate with them. But the energy would be really tense. And then as Psalm 23 played over and over again, the energy in the room just sort of went all floppy. And I learned to use recording devices to capture them, to capture the actual sounds, so I could communicate with them when I was learning, before I learned how to be a medium properly. And so I've captured the sounds of somebody who was stuck saying, "Oh, I understand. Oh, I see the angel." And then thank you. And I've heard that over and over and over again. In the early days was, I can't see the angel, help. And then they hear the Psalm 23 playing, and then they're like, "Oh, now I understand. Thank you." It's just the fear. You know yourself, if you're in a fearful situation, you just contract. You can't think. You're overcome by that panic, And if you have died and you haven't figured it out, or you haven't sort of got some sort of a plan in your mind, or I'm sure mum will be there, or my auntie, or there'll be a dove or an angel, or I'll look for a light, a bright light, or whoever it is. Um, and you get in that situation, then the best thing you can do is to um, know that you're always surrounded by a spiritual team. You're not alone. You've just got to learn to perceive them. So if you take a deep breath, I know you won't feel like you actually have a breath, but take a deep breath and calm yourself by trying to find where your heart would be. You can then realize that you are light, and that light will connect to the light of Jesus or a tunnel or a bright sun or whatever. And you can visualize like two Lego bricks connecting. The light connects to the light. You're just surrounded by darkness because it's the fear, and it's just also the way that we transition from one dimension to the other. That's the best way I can say it. So yeah, the spirit guide, if I was a spirit guide trying to coax somebody, it would be definitely every human being on earth needs to have death education. We need to talk about the fact that we have to get our parents ready, our children ready for death. And then we need to understand that even if we don't believe in a religious context, there are books and prayers and conversations written that we can have when our loved ones are nearing, that will speak in a language that our loved one understands. And yeah, so that book has lots of different prayers, but also, yeah, Psalm 23, put it on YouTube and just keep it playing. It doesn't have to be audible to the person who's dying. You can just have it really low. And then their subconscious mind processes that and says, oh, this Psalm 23 is telling me how to get to the afterlife, to get to heaven, or whatever the concept that they believe in.
I love that. Psalm 23, it's like Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
but instead of capturing the ghosts, you showing them how to get to the light. That's wonderful. I didn't know. I didn't read Psalm 23, so I didn't know, but now I know. So that's really cool and awesome. And thank you for sharing that. Um, I had one more question, but I forgot what it was. You were saying something about man, what was it? Um, I forgot now. But it was related to oh, it's fine. I'll message you privately if I remember. But anyway, thank you so much for Katish. I really enjoyed this discussion. I learned a lot. And I'm excited for our book. And you made me realize that I think a project that I need to do is maybe put some information together for people looking on information on how to die. Like the Psalm 23 thing definitely needs to be in there. Preparing yourself with what you need to know so that you are not in a fearful place and so that you don't maybe attach to one specific way of dying. Many other things that we've discussed came up. So I think I will look into putting that on my project list, and I'll call you up and get an interview with you and quote you on all the wonderful things that you were sharing. But yeah,
And
thank you
I
so much.
That's all right. And I do think that also a lot of the things that bother people before they die is the stuff that we don't want to do, that we have to get in place, is get a will. Make sure that you don't feel forced to do anything that you don't want to do. If you need to leave all your possessions to the RSPCA or animal welfare, do it. If you need to put stickers on things and write people's names, do it. If you need to give away your entire inheritance before you're anywhere near dying, do it. Do it your way. And just make sure that you have stepped out everything so that I have a folder in my house that says will and last directives. And, it steps out. What do I want from my funeral? What do I want for this, that? Here's the instructions. Be as prepared as you can, knowing that nobody wants to do it. But it's like, I've seen people do it. They say, like people who are married, they get together and they're like, right, um, this weekend we're going to tackle this and we'll help each other with the fears, and then we'll give ourselves a treat of whatever it is as the incentives that we're just going to get this done, and then it's doesn't need to be dealt with again for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, get the
Yeah.
fear of what could go wrong out of your head, as well as the process of what do I want?
Yes. I don't know who said it. Someone said this. They said this in life, there's only two things that are certain, and that's taxes and death. So, you gotta, you preparing, you have to prepare for it and do it now while you are not fearful that you're gonna die tomorrow, right? Like if you're gonna wait until you're 95 years old, it's not gonna be the same as you doing it now.
No,
And you can always update things as things change in
you
your
can.
life. You can always decide if you want to change things up, and you can do so, but have that folder or that binder or whatever it may be, where the people, because also you think of it from the perspective of those surrounding you that's going to be organizing your stuff. They're grieving too. They don't want to still be thinking about, oh, I wonder what she would like and what she would want and where am I going to find this and that. If your things are in order, you allow them the space to grieve without thinking about logistics and administration, which is also a gift to them in a way, I think.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, somebody who might be more advanced, and I don't mean advanced in that kind of way, but more along the journey of contemplating death. If you have come to the notion that there is life after this life, which everybody in this book will show you in different ways, then why not, instead of focusing on what didn't I achieve in this lifetime or what would I have liked to achieve in this lifetime, why not imagine yourself the most curious, creative, interesting, and fascinating next life? Because you follow your thoughts. So, what do you want to be next time?
Oh, that's a cool hack. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a
So
cool
then
hack.
you focus on that. And then you train your brain. Oh, I want to be a research scientist next time, and I want to live on an island with only turtles. Great. Make
Wow.
that your last thought before you die, and boom, I bet that's where you'll be
Wow, that is so
next time
cool. Yeah,
round.
because your consciousness will instantly be projected wherever you project it. So, think of
Yeah.
good things. And I think that is a lesson for all of life, really. Think of good things. Clear your mind of all this negativity and anxiety and all the thoughts that give you those feelings of negativity and anxiety. I know our world is filled with them, but our world is also filled with goodness and love and kindness and all the things that make us feel good. So, focusing on those things not only help you live a better life and a better quality of life, but I think I'm very sure of it. It will also contribute to a more positive death, and how you transition after as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Katisha. I really appreciate you. I will put a link to where people can learn more about you and all the things you're up to in the description. And then I'll also put a link to our book. It's on a promotion now for 99 cents. I'll put that in the description. Get the book. It's going to be amazing. You're going to enjoy it. And be sure to leave us your feedback, your reviews, send us emails, texts, find us on social media, and let us know what you think of our book. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you, Katish.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.